Now, I want to make these videos, and I want you to keep in mind that these things that I'm sharing on video are things that I would discuss with a therapist. Many things that I've already shared with you are things that I have talked about with therapists about, okay? Okay. Now, the history that I have with therapy is kind of interesting. I mean, I've had some therapists who were bad for me, okay? They caused further distress in my mind and what we may call psychological damage, okay? So, over the years I kind of, you realize that, some therapists are not even worth going to visit with, okay? Others are. How is it that I have the chance to, filter out who's a good therapist, who's a bad therapist? Because therapy, you only go once a week, once a month, or whatever, you quarterly, however often, and you only go for an hour. That's only so much time to talk about so much, and that's it, okay? Okay, so during therapy, the patient also has to discern, has to think through, is this a therapist that is good for me or not? Okay? And so on and so on. So when you consider this information, I want you to consider mental health, but I also want you to consider quantum science. Okay? Quantum science is a legitimate science out there, okay? I mean, that is very true. So I'm just presenting information to you, and you could keep these things in mind, okay? Keep in mind mental health, and keep in mind true science. There's a category that we call quantum science, okay? Now I want you to visualize me, Taffy, as a 5th grader, okay? Pre-adolescent 5th grader sitting in school. Imagine my classroom. Now my classroom was bigger than this, so imagine this room bigger than this, and I'm sitting in the classroom, and all along the ceiling, along the wall, at ceiling level, are these pictures of the rulers of the geographical areas that we now call the United States of America. But at that point, it was an empire in a state of flux. Things were fluxing and changing. So we had, the ruler of Arizona, the ruler of, Alabama, the ruler of, Ohio, and they were kings and queens, okay? Then gradually over time, with the empire that was changing in a state of flux, some of them changed to governors. The governor of Texas, the governor of... Meanwhile, this one was still the king of Alabama. This one was the... I'm guessing here, but what was Mississippi at some point a governor instead of a king? Okay, so gradually over time, all these royal rulers, 50 royal rulers, changed in a state of flux, okay? So I want you to visualize that, and I want you to consider that maybe you went through the same thing. If you don't remember what that was, those fluxes in time, maybe you want to consider that no, we have been experiencing fluxes in time, okay? So I want you to consider that there are variables that we need to have in perspective, okay? So that's what I'm endeavoring to do, is to inform you about these variables, okay? Okay, I'm going to put it on pause. Okay, so I want you to consider your own mental health as well. I mean, when you were a child, or whenever it was that this happened to you, consider that it may have happened to you. And that, some of these rulers that we call, governors now, were actually kings and queens. I also want you to consider that this empire that we now call the United States of America did have a stage where they were called provinces. No, they were not provinces of England. They were provisional governments hoping to remain royal, okay? So this empire was going through a reorganization, okay? And at some point it became a federal government that was hoping to preserve its royalty, but also was preparing for another possibility. What if we, the people, decided to not want to wear crowns? We did not want people to wear crowns, for whatever reason. And we wanted to subdivide the responsibility even more. So we noticed the mayor of the city only does so much, and then there's also the city manager, which could be a lifelong occupation. But the city manager, if these responsibilities were won, that would be a royal, pretty much what a royal ruler would do. Okay, so on city level is our princes and princesses. And then on a state level, and at another point in time, these were individual countries. At state level, these are kings and queens. And then on an empire level, which we now call a nation, a great nation, or a federal government. These were emperors and empresses. Emperor and empresses. Okay? So, president and first lady used to be called emperor and empress, okay? That's what they were called. This was a lifelong royal thing. It wasn't a 4-year term or an 8-year term, okay? So these things were in a state of flux. But I mentioned how we are as a people. I could draw a circle and a thin crescent here. These people are the people who chose to do what they should. These are our spirit guides.